Hi, everyone, and welcome to FutureGaze. If you're new here or haven't been to one of these sessions before, FutureGaze is a series of lunchtime conversations for creatives run by ourselves, Creative Edinburgh, and in partnership with Edinburgh Futures Institute. The series explores the future of our creative industries and practices and features inspiring discussions with creative leaders who are driving innovation and transformation in their work. I'm Vicky, I'm the program manager here at Creative Edinburgh, and I'm here with our host today, Caroline Parkinson from the Edinburgh Futures Institute. Today is our 11th installment in the series, and we're joined by Tom Bryant and Victoria Watson to talk all about the future of animation. In a moment, I'll hand over to Caroline to kick off this conversation, and we will have time for questions at the end. So please do use the chat box to drop your questions and thoughts in there as well. And please note that this session is being recorded, so do feel free to keep your cameras off and stay on mute throughout. So that's that from me. Enjoy today's session and conversation. I'm super excited to hear all about what Tom and Victoria have to say. And over to you, Caroline.
Thanks very much, Vicky. Welcome, everyone. I'm Caroline Parkinson, Director of Creative at Edinburgh Futures Institute. Thank you for taking time out to reflect, consider, and gaze into the future with us in conversation today with Tom Bryant of Cahoots Studios and the Move Summit and Victoria Watson of EYEBOLLS. So thank you for joining us today. Ola or Vicky, could you pin us so that I can see Victoria and Tom as larger boxes? Thank you. That would be great as we reflect and gaze into our future. Today, we're looking at the future of animation. What is involved in the craft of animation now and into the future? How will the industry change through technological advancements? And what changes can we expect by commissioners and streaming platforms? And of course, how will AI affect the workflow pipeline and the creative process? And how will the industry respond to that? We'll also look at the future of the Move Summit in Scotland. So let's introduce our speakers. Tom Bryant is the co-founder and creative director of Cahoots Studios in Edinburgh, an animation and visual effects studio. Cahoots creates work for commercials, children's television, games and film. In 2008, Tom founded his first animation studio, Interference Pattern, to co-create the animated short film The Lost Thing, and worked as the project's lead 3D artist. The film went on to win the 2011 Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, amongst its other many festival successes. That's really good, Tom. I'm glad you wrote that down in your bio, because usually you don't tell anyone. In 2017, Tom co-founded Move Summit and has been operations director for the past 8 years. And of course, for 2026, he will be at the helm again. And Victoria Watson is co-founder, creative director of EYEBOLLS Studio. Victoria graduated as an animator in 2006 from Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art and Design in Dundee. Victoria's worked as producer and director in live action and all forms of animation, and has worked on a number of short films, commercials, and television series for clients such as Netflix, BBC, and Disney. In 2017, Victoria joined Rona Drummond in running EYEBOLLS, an award-winning full-service studio based in Edinburgh. They create and produce content for TV shows, films, creative advertising, and experiential agencies. So thank you to both of you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks for having me.
So let's settle ourselves and have a beginning question just to open up the dialogue. I've just been thinking, we all have, grown up and loved and lived with animation from our whole lives, from childhood into adulthood. But for you who make animation, there must have been huge changes even since you graduated in the noughties. So I wondered if you could outline what is involved in the craft of animation at present. Has it changed a great deal since you graduated? I mean, I'm thinking, Tom, even since you made The Lost Thing, how would you make it now compared to then? So it'd just be interesting to hear how much it's changed and how animation is made right now before we get into the future.
Yeah, it might be surprising to people, I guess, that the core way that we make 3D animation hasn't changed all that much in terms of the kind of the workflow we use, the kind of structure we use. Um, there has been a kind of continual evolvement of tools. So the capabilities around what we can do in a certain amount of time and a certain amount of resource has increased massively. But the sort of way we do the work, building 3D models and how we make them move and how we give them kind of a look and a surface and a sort of lifelikeness, so if that's the desired kind of result, that sort of workflow and kind of what we do hasn't really changed all that much. But I guess it's the evolution of the tools we use, the evolution of the compute power we can access very easily at our fingertips, the cost of the hardware required to run the programs. All of that has kind of really made it, I guess, faster. I know you say easier is the wrong term to use, but faster, more accessible for people. Back when I first started out, when I was studying, the hardware we used wasn't consumer level. It was all it was Silicon Graphics with the kind of manufacturer, and they were like high-end workstations. And the entry-level workstation, 3D workstation, was clocking in, I think, about £30,000, and that was for the entry-level one, which would these days would be like a phone would like be X number of times faster. It's insane the cost then, because PCs and Macs didn't operate the software. They ran on operating systems called Unix, and they were all called Silicon Graphics. So that was it was a real barrier to entry. During my study, which was back in 2000, maybe, let me think, maybe 98, 99, the software we were running started to be released for PCs. So suddenly, all of a sudden, your barrier to entry dropped, and just anyone who had a high-end PC could start to run the software and start to create. But again, the kind of the things we were doing, working in a 3D virtual space with kind of 3D models, etc., that is what we do still to this day. So yeah, it's there's been changes, but no real. I mean, obviously, we're going to get onto this topic. Up to now, the step change has not been there, and we're doing what roughly kind of what we did, but we're doing better, faster, and producing way better looking things. If you look back at Toy Story 1, that was groundbreaking at the time, but now it looks very basic because of the tools we can deploy.
And what about for you, Victoria?
Yeah, I mean, similarly for 2D animation, that was one of the areas I studied. And yeah, the same sort of thing. The fundamentals are still the same. You're still drawing frame by frame, but now you're obviously drawing straight onto like a tablet or straight into digital basically. So the fundamentals of animation are still the same. Obviously 2D sort of went into more rigged style as well, which is sort of that bridge between sort of 3D and 2D. Again, the software just keeps improving, and again, we'll get onto the topic of AI, but the process is still the same. With stop motion, similarly, we still need cameras, we still need sets and props and lights, but it's now obviously fed through into software to take the pictures as opposed to obviously being on film. So again, some of the technology has changed, but the fundamentals of making it are still the same. So everything at its core, storytelling, craft is still there. So that may well change, and we can talk about that later.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of good to know, though, reassuring. There's still some foundational principles and processes that haven't changed and you're familiar with. And it's the tools that are evolving. And of course, we can't avoid the AI question. How is AI impacting the sector? I know it's started to evolve in the last couple of years, AI-enabled workflow tools and repetitive tasks, solving fast compute problems, and that frees up creative time, and there's efficiencies because of that. But on the other side is GenAI, and of course the GenAI impact has been more controversial. So I'm wondering, how is AI as a whole affecting the making, but also how is it affecting how commissioners and streamers are thinking, and how are animators responding to that? Either one of you can kick off.
I'll let you go first, Tom.
I'd say we're still in very much a period of uncertainty,
Yeah.
where we're assessing tools, assessing where we can introduce kind of efficiencies in what we do, seeing what feels like a good fit for us. I think everyone's going to have to make their own choices and own decisions on how they use things, when they use them, what they use them for.
Yeah.
So we're still very much in a kind of sort of assessment phase. I think there's some things we do where tools that allow us to essentially do those kind of less creative tasks that can help us speed up our kind of workflows, but while still letting us have the kind of creative input that, in all honesty, we enjoy. It's kind of I think working in animation, people do it because they enjoy the process, and so I think it's maybe finding that balance of retaining that ability to do and enjoy the process, whilst maybe taking out some of the stuff that isn't much fun to do. I mean, like no one.
The grunt work, the rotoscoping and things like that obviously are quite labour intensive. I think that's where AI tools will be helpful for production, for time and budget as well, but also it lets the creator be the creator as opposed to doing those sort of lesser tasks. But it will have an impact, and again we'll talk about this later, about the sort of entry level roles. And I think there is that distinguish between GenAI and obviously AI tools. I think obviously we're seeing a lot of generative AI on like your Instagram and things like that, and I think maybe that becomes a bit more interesting for solo creators who maybe don't have a big studio and don't have the budget to be making certain aspects of the animation. Perhaps someone who's a really good character animator has been asked to make a film for a client, but they're not maybe so good at background design and don't have the money to pay for somebody. So I think that's maybe perhaps an area that's quite interesting, that they might start looking at that as an option. But I personally feel like generative AI, I don't think we're at the place where it's going to take over yet. I mean, that may change very soon, but I feel like when you see generative AI, you straight away see all the things that are wrong with it. And I've seen other people put prompts in, and it may fix one mistake, but then you'll get another version and there's about 10 other things that are wrong with it. So I don't think we're quite there yet with the generative AI, and I don't think we ever will be, if I'm honest. I mean, don't quote me, 5 years time, you're like, oh, you're talking absolute rubbish. But I just feel like there's something to be said about the human touch, and I think that's why animation techniques such as hand-drawn 2D and stop motion are making a resurgence, because it's similar to like even like the music industry and cameras and any technology. People are still always want to have that sort of human feel, or like something that's a bit more original, and doesn't look so slick and flawless. Like there's something in the imperfections that make it charming. And there's a difference, I think, in imperfections and just mistakes, which is what obviously a lot of AI stuff is.
There's a sweet spot there. So just thinking about everything you've said, given that's where we are now in this milieu of tools and AI evolving, there still must be industry standards tools you've come to use, with maybe quite a range of other digital tools and plugins you must have to be proficient in. And with current and upcoming technological advances, they must be making a difference to how you make animation. And how do you keep up and adapt? Does it open up new creative possibilities? Just wonder if you could talk a little bit about how that has helped you create the work, or create new work, come up with new ideas.
I think so. I think there's always I think animation is, because I'm speaking on the, I think 3D and the kind of digital 2D side as well. They're, as I sort of alluded to earlier, what has changed is the fact that there's a constant stream of new tools that let us do things faster, and faster means cheaper and hopefully better as well. I think there's a constant pressure at the moment. I think there always has been, right? I think this is a new thing. Constant pressure to essentially always produce better work, which we like. We like to be challenged, but likely always do better work for less money. Budgets are getting squeezed all around at the moment, so we always look out for, okay, how can we do things, maintaining that quality, but whilst being able to kind of make things work for the budgets that our clients have, because if they don't have the money, they only got X amount of money, and we've got to make something, then we've got to find out a way to make that. So it's always looking at new tools. And there are loads of cool stuff coming to the market. Like there's for example, traditionally, if you're doing sort of heavy effects work, kind of explosion-based things, or liquid sims, for example, that's a really time-consuming, compute-heavy simulation task, which can take a long time. Now, the last couple of years, there's been a lot of cool real-time GPU, fire, fluid solver things coming out, which are amazing. They've still got a little way to go to be able to deal with the really massive heavy-duty stuff, but the fact that they can start to do this stuff in real time, just leveraging kind of consumer level GPU hardware, is pretty amazing. It's these sort of advances that are letting us do that work better and faster. Yeah, and so it's a constant evolution of kind of tools, kind of where there's, I think there'll be a crossover point in a way that Victoria sort of mentioned there about if you're using kind of more generative AI based stuff, and it's the quality is not the quality and sort of rigorous perfection that we have to hit. I think where there's a crossing point of where actually an end client might be like, well, I don't mind spending way less money if I can get something that is like maybe 70% as good, and I don't care about all the stuff that's just a little bit wrong, because it's only going to get seen on someone's social feed, and it's like a teeny little thing on someone's phone. And so I think that whole area is still to play out and see how that works,
and how the audience would react to that as well.
Exactly. I mean, people, I guess it really depends on the content and the destination and what it's for.
The platform, the purpose.
Exactly. And whether we as kind of, I guess, creators there's probably more impetus and pressure on us to then continue, if we want to not go down that route and continue to do more creative work, we have to leverage more tools that let us do that work better, faster, ourselves, as opposed to handing it all over. So it's, I think now more than ever, there's an impetus to both looking at new traditional tools, leveraging those more kind of machine learning based things that can help us do the work we want to do better and faster.
Efficiency.
It's, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I think in the past we've run projects that have been inefficient. We've labored time and money on areas that in the end we didn't need to. If we actually look at the final result, we go, we spent a bit too much time perfecting that bit. So I think there's learnings to be had for us as producers as well here.
Yeah, definitely. I think it also opens up opportunities to go for different projects as well. Like, the whole experiential side of things is something that's becoming more and more important, and I think people are wanting that sort of in-person experience but mixing with technologies and those sorts, like the Unreal Engine and things like that. We hadn't worked in that before, but it opened up lots of avenues for us to explore that by rendering things in real time. It just opens up more opportunities to be creative. So I think it's using it in a smart way that it keeps the creative intact as well.
And you were mentioning there earlier, Victoria, about GenAI having inconsistencies and still enjoying human imperfection and hitting that balance. Is there a use for GenAI at the moment, before you would consider using it per se in a quality product? Is there a role for it, maybe in inspiring or setting out a quick idea for a client, a mood board? Is there a way to use GenAI at the moment?
I think that's probably the biggest area that you're seeing it in, from my experience anyway, like for pitches and things like that. So a lot of projects that we go for, you don't get paid to pitch. So you can't always pay for concept artists. And I do think that is an area, unfortunately, that will be affected by generative AI, because, again, it's like, how many projects do you go for where you have a pot of money? So a lot of the time you either have to pay out your own money, and if you don't have that available, then it's somewhere where I think it can be used, because it is just an idea and it's not the actual final thing. And what you would hope is that you can develop it with humans and get
Right.
real product. But I would say that's probably where it's more popular at the moment in the industry.
So, given the context that you've described so far, what do you think will be important for animators to focus on moving forward in an increasingly AI world? Will it be the importance of the craft, of the storytelling, of the
Yeah.
human connection? What
Yeah,
do
I
you
think so.
feel?
I think storytelling is always going to be at the heart of it. We are making stories, and I think that has to come from a human experience as well. Like I think that's what makes a really good film, is like it makes someone feel something, and I don't think you're going to get that from an AI script. I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't read any recently, but I think it means that we have to, yeah, be more. Sorry, I've just someone's sharing their screen, but I don't know what was happening there. Yeah, we have to, yeah, stick to the key craft, but also I think there's an element of accepting that this is here and it's not going away. Like I think it's working out where you can use it efficiently and still be the creator or the director, as opposed to maybe always being the executor. Like so, it's learning where to be clever in your pipeline, but still keeping the creative at the heart of it.
Yeah, I think everyone will have to find the place that works for them. I think it's something that's quite, I guess where you're sitting on where depends, we're talking on the scale of the whole thing. You know, it could be it can be divisive, and it is divisive, and everyone, it's one of these things that a lot of people have quite rightly have their own viewpoints on, whether it's from an environmental point of view,
Yeah.
whether it's from a kind of an ethical point of view. You know, these are big conversations which there's no point
Yeah.
shying away from, which are really
Yeah.
relevant. So I think everyone needs to find out their own, where they sit on the spectrum, and follow that. In terms, sorry, I've jumped to my answer for the previous question. So I think it would still be, for what people focus on is core art skills for the area they want to work in. You know, things about, you know, how to composition, how to compose an image, color, all these things. I think they're still going to be massively important wherever you're working in this spectrum of kind of AI usage in the kind of creative production. I think they've always been massively important, and they'll continue. Those sort of core artistic skills will continue to be massively important. On the visual side, that's kind of what my focus area is. And what do you know? Luckily, they're really good fun, right? So I mean, you're focusing on something that's really good fun to do. That's no bad thing, is it? Yeah.
So staying with that theme then, obviously there may be some educators in the audience today, and the Move Summit has an Emerging Talent Day working with education providers and is dedicated to students. How will craft skills need to develop in that context in education, as this pace of change must be quite a challenge for educators? Writing new programs of courses and curriculum takes time. And obviously there might be frameworks where you can adapt faster, but just thinking about the craft skills, you mentioned the core art skills, but what else do you think educators might need to place into curriculum or into project work to make sure that their skills are developing that's going to be required to get into industry?
Do you want to go? I mean, I think again, it is developing those skills, because I think if they end up, I mean, obviously I can't speak for the logistics of what happens at university in terms of how they do checks or anything like that. But if a student just goes down the AI route and doesn't actually learn those key things, they're not going to survive out in the real world, because it'll become very apparent very quickly that they haven't got what it takes. Because at the moment we are still working in a lot of these roles and AI hasn't taken over. So currently I would say they need to still be learning all of that stuff, because it'll stand out that they don't know what they're doing. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, you work in teams in an animation studio, and some of it will be fast, collaborative work, drawing up the idea, storyboarding it quickly, coming up with a concept. Sometimes even with a client, they'll change their view based on, you know, an iterative conversation which you end up drawing out. There has to be still that skill base.
Definitely.
I think very, very much so. I don't think there's going to be a one size fits all for each studio. I think different studios are going to pick up different parts of their pipeline they might more automate. So I think, you know, students are going to have to be flexible. They're going to have all the underlying knowledge anyway. And if
Mhm.
certain parts of that are enhanced or augmented or replaced with or AI tools or whatever, I think they're very much at risk if they're not building that underlying base of knowledge, because it's still going to be deployed for, I mean, I think in the short term, who knows what's going to happen, like, you know, whatever, 5 years down the line.
Yeah.
But for now, I'd say very much so, especially as studios aren't really wholeheartedly jumping in and rolling out really broad kind of implementations. I think a lot of people are doing augmenting certain parts of the pipeline, whether it's kind of, you know, animation enhancement or yeah, kind
Rendering
of
or
yeah, that's a I think it's the highly inefficient use of compute power for rendering. So we've got these wonderful things called GPUs that churn it out of Unreal pretty
well,
quickly.
yeah.
But given that
So
AI-enabled tools are starting to enter into the workflow and the pipeline, maybe there is a role for education providers or even experimentation by students to be aware of these
Oh, yeah,
AI-enabled
definitely.
workflow tools so they're ready for your context. And
absolutely.
I know that you're saying about core art skills and you want the uniqueness of the human voice of that animator, their storytelling or their characterization or even their writing chops. You're always going to be looking for that, aren't you? But in your team, you're still looking for those other background technical skills. So there will be an element
Yeah, I
of
think
you've got to
future
be.
protection for the
Sorry, Victoria.
students. Yeah,
totally interrupted Caroline, is it?
that's all right. I was just finishing a thought. Feel
Yeah, I
free to
think
interrupt me.
I think you're right. I think they do need to be prepared, but as Tom said, it could be quite tricky because every studio works slightly different and they have different softwares. Like for instance, from a 2D traditional animation point of view, you know, a lot of the universities in this country are using TV Paint, which is recognised across the globe. However, a lot of commercial productions and hand-drawn animation are using Toon Boom, but Toon Boom is quite expensive. So, you know, I think as an industry, and we are trying to do this, is work closer with the education, like, you know, all the colleges and universities, and trying to get as much of a connection with them as possible so that the students are prepared. And I do think there's definitely universities out there that are being more innovative and working closely. You know, DJ CAD are doing really well. They have mentorship programs with the studios. We've done it in the last couple of years. Last year, one of our mentees became one of our workforce, so that was great. And we do stuff like Reset, which is a great internship program. So I think it's like bridging that gap is a bigger conversation other than just AI. And it's also just, you know, making them ready for the workforce. Like they should be working in teams and making films collaboratively as opposed to just making their own thing or just set projects. I think it would be good to see more of that. But again, that's a bigger conversation, I think.
The other thing that came to my mind, which I haven't mentioned to you before, but it just came to mind, was something you said earlier, both of you, about real time and about Unreal Engine. And of course, in education, there isn't just education, there's research. And that the CoStar project has begun the conversions of screen technology in real time. And I know that as animators and Animation Scotland's been along to see what that can do for yourselves as animators, but also how animation is converging with other experiences and interaction design and gaming and so forth. I wonder if you could reflect a little bit on that side of things.
I think it sits quite nicely in the whole ecosystem of tools. You know, I mean, Unreal, it's got its pros and, for example, taking that one as for example, it's got its pros and cons. It's great at some things. Actually, some things it's because it's maybe not an established pipeline tool for working in kind of film and TV. It's becoming very much so. It sits slightly less comfortably in a studio pipeline. A bit more work has to be done to kind of get it really integrated. So it's one of these things that it works really, really well for a certain type of project, and more so, you know, it's becoming more capable. People are starting to do nice kind of character rigging and stuff in it now. I think animators mainly pull their hair out when you ask them to animate in it. It's just the kind of UI and interaction is not quite there yet. So it's one of these tools that adds to our toolbox as kind of 3D animation creators, and actually 2D as well, because some nice 2D software coming out for Unreal. It's one of these things that we can add to our toolbox to help make things faster, and kind of therefore cheaper essentially.
Mm.
It's suitable for some projects, a really super heavy fur, hair, cloth sim type project where you want that real
Yeah.
reliability,
Yeah.
accuracy of simulation doesn't sit well with it.
No.
So it's not a kind of, and it never has been in 3D. It's not a one kind of solution fits all. We use it. I would think of 3D as a toolbox. We have all these different tools that do things, and we think at the start of a project, we think about how can we use different parts, plug it together into something that's going to work for this kind of project. So the kind of I guess the exploration in the facilities like CoStar are really positive and great because they let us have an opportunity potentially to explore using these kind of techniques and facilities, and then we can go, okay, we got this brief comes in, we need to go virtual production route for this, so cool, we can go up there and sort of test something out. So I think it's really good to have these sort of facilities just to I guess as studios let us hopefully flex our kind of muscles.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just talking on that, we did go up and visit CoStar, and weirdly, a couple of weeks later, we got a brief in that was perfect for Unreal Engine and a lot of the research they were doing there. So they were great. We got in touch with them, and they were really supportive. And sadly, we didn't win the job, but it was a key part of the pitch. But it wouldn't have been something that we would have ever maybe went for originally if we hadn't seen what the capabilities are and the facilities up there. So I do think they're doing some really great work. Obviously, virtual production is quite interesting, even from a live action point of view, but also potentially for a stop motion as well, because obviously stop motion is quite similar to live action in that you've got your sets and your cameras and your lights. But I know that Callum Main is doing a lot of research into that with the guys down in Leith. So yeah, there's lots of possibilities with that, and I think it's really interesting. But like as Tom says, there's still obviously we're still getting there with that technology.
Absolutely, it's the beginning of a research project, but the project is concerned about the needs of industry. So it's looking forward to things and challenges that you'll raise or experiments you'll raise, and that they can help you to develop and solve an experiment with you. So I think it's the beginning, and CoStar will be present at the Move Summit as well to keep that convergence going between the sectors and between the tools. So moving forward then, I wanted to ask about the business aspects, because alongside the craft, which we've talked about, there's the business of being an animation studio. And I wondered how technological and AI advancements are impacting how the business is unfolding. Is it impacting how commissioners expect work to be developed or what they expect you to deliver? Streaming platforms, again, also have their own MO and how they operate and how they work with animation companies. Just wondered what you're starting to see coming from them, maybe at the World Animation Summit chats or just in any contractual discussions.
I would say actually the biggest impact at the moment is coming on the kind of short form side, so the commercials. The question that we have right at the start is always, what are the potential opportunities for using AI in some way to make this cheaper? Essentially, we've got this budget, we want this. How on earth do we get these two sides and expectations to meet? And so that kind of working with kind of agencies on kind of commercials work, that's for us, that's where we're noticing this at the moment. Obviously, we get all the kind of pitch concept artwork that is generally AI generated that we'll get from an agency when we're getting a kind of brief to bid on. There's this slight sticking point that a client may have totally bought into that. They've seen it in Verticom's final visual, and they get really bought into that, and that leaves us much less room to kind of bring our creativity to the table. But obviously, often that
I did wonder about that.
That final visual is not achievable on the budget they may have.
No.
Right.
So this whole sort of thing at the start is trickier to navigate.
I wonder if there'll be industry pushback for that kind of logic.
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say the same. It's definitely like we had a pitch come in from an agency, and like that, there was a lot of AI, and you could see the mistakes in it. It's hilarious. But yeah, the budget didn't match the look, and we were like, how do we do this? How do we create that same look, but like on that budget and on that time scale? And we came up with some concepts, but but it wasn't going to be exactly like what they'd generated. Like it couldn't. So I do think that I agree that's where it's coming from. But I think there's obviously like the whole copyright and stealing artwork and ideas, and obviously the legal side of things,
Right.
having things in place for your contracts for your artists, as well. I know we're going to talk about maybe IP, but
Hmm.
obviously, the bigger companies are making sure that they're able to secure their images from being stolen. So I think that's a big thing, and I think if you are developing anything original, to cover yourselves on that. And obviously the law is a little bit behind, but it is catching up. So yeah, I think from a creating original content, like bigger, like long form, I think that is a little bit scary to put new work out there. So just to protect yourselves, make
Yeah.
sure you get everything, all your domains and trademarks and licensing. I know that Aardman have got copyright on every single character that they've ever made. Which is, it's just one of those things. I think sometimes as creators you don't really think about that stuff when you start playing about with ideas and things, and you think maybe the main characters are going to be obviously the most important, but actually I think now people have to think strategically about all of the content that they're making.
Hmm. I remember, I mean, everything's evolved since the example I'm about to give a couple of years ago, where a company was commissioned and said that the GenAI had to be limited only to the concept or mood board because they didn't know where the legal situation would be by the time the animation was delivered in terms of where that AI generation is coming from.
Yeah, I
And
think that's
so
where the
it
grey
gets into
area.
an IP quagmire.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
I think it
I
can
guess
only be copyrighted if there's been a human part, and I
Mhm.
think if it's completely generated, I don't think at the moment that's not covered under copyright laws, but
I
I'm not
guess
a
I
lawyer.
guess where there's a I see a sort of potential use case if people are thinking, okay, well, how can I essentially bypass a big if I got a I think if I got a campaign, right, I've got existing assets that maybe been made traditionally and I want to produce more content, and if you can train your own models based on your library of
Right.
existing
Yeah.
content, and then let's say churn out a bunch of other stuff, whether that's
Yes.
based on
Yeah, well, that's
film
you,
reference, etc. I
right.
think that's
That's you
Hmm.
using your own
Yeah.
database. So we're
exactly.
in Coaster, we're also researching this with another university on creating what he calls walled gardens, where you're training an AI on your own database to help you
Yeah.
as a creative partner. So you're already, seeing trends and patterns coming out of your own work. So this is a way we could embrace it as a sector
Mhm.
going forward and not necessarily open it up to the bigger context. There's a question in the chat about that, which I will come to. So yeah, let's look at this IP point. Obviously, you have ideas of your own, and we've seen at the World Animation Summit and so forth, people bring in their own intellectual property, their own ideas. I'm wondering how, in this AI arc we're in, how producers will get their own ideas made in this context. What's your view on how it might unfold?
I think it is about ownership versus art and the boundaries of it as well. Like again, going back to that whole, like, if you're coming up with IP, just making sure that you're protected and everything from the top down, all your licenses, all your contracts, everything is super tight. And you're working with the best entertainment lawyers, because I think it's such a niche area of the law as well, and it's obviously ever changing. Um, and just make sure if you are working with partners as well, just reviewing their policies, and your artists, make sure they're all on board with your policies as well. And again, that can come down to contracts as well.
It's making sure that making sure that you've got everything in place that that if you're wanting to be kind of enclosed and sealed off, people aren't going off and coming up with new designs by feeding their existing designs into a model and coming up with something
Hmm.
new. I guess being sort of clever about how you're more thoughtful about how you're working, I guess, and
Yeah.
just having
Hmm.
to
Responsible.
yeah exactly. I mean, I guess I don't know about if you're coming up with an original concept anyway,
Mhm.
then maybe that's not changing. You're working on, if you're wanting to be original and you're doing original design and stuff, you are just relying on your art team to be original and work creatively at that point, because maybe that's the key area, the key time when you just need human input. And again, maybe you can ideate a little bit, coming up with some initial inspiration for kind of designs, etc., which you could argue that people do anyway by looking at a bunch of films and go, oh cool, I love that, how that character expression works, etc. So no, you can make the argument that actually, it's kind of looking at looking at kind of examples and reference, essentially, because you're generating reference in a slightly different way. I see that as a kind of pretty valid argument. But then you're using the traditional creative workflow to work with your designers to then distill those into kind of unique original designs, for example, on the visual side, or if you're working about the basic idea and plot for, let's call it a TV show, kids TV show you're developing, then to be fair, that should be original anyway. I think for it to have any traction, that part should be original. And I think to get kind of traction with your kind of commissioners, that probably needs to be, unless you're going for a market or platform where you just need volume of content.
Yeah,
And
I was
maybe
wondering about that. Commissioners and streamers are obviously seeing what I would like to call a race to the bottom in terms of money, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to pay off. But you could see different levels of output. So you could see high volume, high frequency of animated TV shows for children where there's just hundreds of episodes. Maybe you'll see more GenAI involved. And there may also be a niche for high-end quality animated features. And then there might be a use for all the different tools, and including AI, in your social media campaigns that feed into or gamification of experiences around. Once it's out there and people want to engage with it, or children want to engage with it, there may be other ways of engaging creatively. So I could see kind of a layer of different product, as we maybe mentioned earlier, in the future of the animation sector, and you being pulled in as animators to other sectors in advertising and social media campaigns and goodness knows what else, in order to to put around this new original IP, which is appearing in different layers.
I'm sure the digital, I'm sure YouTube is going to be, or whatever channel it is going to be flooded with let's just call it content. I don't think it'll be, I think just stuff to hold people's eyeballs.
I do wonder if the audience will vote with their feet sometimes, They might sort of see it and think, actually, no, and put on social, this isn't great. And audience can always vote with their feet sometimes. So.
Yeah, I would hope that actually, quality crafted content that's just it's been written really well, and so it's engaging. And maybe some of the visual side has been kind of produced with kind of GenAI on one side, whether it's you've inputted actual animation data and it's come up with a visual render look or something, maybe fine, because I think it's probably the only way you can make enough content. But I'd like to think that
it will get better as well, though. Let's not be
top.
all down on the whole, thing. It will get better as well, won't it?
Yeah, it will, definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to think the stuff that floats to the top is going to be the stuff that's good, whatever I would call good stuff that's
and some
of
it might
written,
just
well
be
scripted.
fun. I mean, I used to get asked about, when I was at Creative Scotland, about quality and how do you protect quality, and I just said, well, what would you say about the Blair Witch Project in terms of the way that it was produced and made? People were saying, well, that's not necessarily high quality filmmaking. Well, one would argue that it is, but the audience engagement was through the roof. So I always find the quality debate is quite difficult in terms of how audiences will react to something that is a new experience, and they might just embrace it. And like you said earlier, maybe 70% will be enough, depending on the content, on the product. So it's a fascinating debate about where we're all
a massive topic.
Open-ended. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then we're going to come to audience questions. But after everything we've talked about, from your viewpoint in the sector and your closeness to the community, Animation Scotland, Animated Women UK, the World Animation Summit, and to education, what do you think the future looks like for animation? It can't be called FutureGaze.
You want to go
if it
first,
doesn't
Victoria?
have a take a risk.
I mean, yeah, obviously it is going to get better. AI is just going to get better. But I hope that, yeah, at the core of it is still going to be the human touch and the craft and the storytelling. And I do think that's what will give the edge, like what Tom was saying about some of the content that's going out there. I think if the idea is really great and it's well executed to a certain extent, I think, you know, that's all I could hope for. But I think it is embracing it in a way that it's not going to take away the core values of being creative, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if we might end up with, you know, a situation where there's, you know, there's still studios doing kind of like some more I would call it traditional, maybe like, you know, actually hands-on crafted work, which might sit at a sort of premium level, and you've got stuff that's more fully AI generated, which kind of sits at a different tier and price point, and maybe there'd be a place
Yeah.
for all of these
Yeah,
things.
Right.
Like
yeah,
what my
Yeah.
sort of concern is, as I kind of said right at the start, is most people who are hands-on, I think, working in animation and got into animation is because they enjoy doing the process. It's one of these
Right.
careers for which we're really fortunate in that, by and large, people get to love what they do every day, which a lot of people don't get to say.
hmm
And for personal experience, I find prompting and waiting for a result, really sodding boring.
it's
And
not.
yes, you might get ways, there'll be ways where you can guide it and be more specific, etc. But still, it's like it's not the same thing.
It's not the same
And
thing.
so I don't really know what will happen. I don't know if
Yeah.
people will float away
I
from it and just
know.
go do something else, because actually the working in animation becomes a different thing.
It does,
And you know,
yeah.
fair enough, there'll be businesses that are AI based who are
Ah,
making content and
I
visuals, and that may
see.
also exist. But I think the people who are in it for the craft and love of making animation, if I was one of them, I would go somewhere else, to be honest. So I think it's about finding that maybe that there is still a market for more sort of human crafted, and then I mean, never on the spectrum. It might be, you know,
Yeah.
It's going to be
that's
really
my
interesting to see how it all shakes down.
yeah,
It
really
really
interesting.
is.
Hopefully
You
we're
know,
still here.
Ah, you know, I love animation, always have, always will. So let's turn to the Move Summit as my last question before I ask the questions in the chat. Tom, it's been going for 8 years with a wee pause during COVID, and it's grown year on year. And now, what were we at last year? 1,500 people on site, something like that, over 3 days.
I think across the 3 days, but we have about on site each day. We have between 500 and 600
Yeah,
people. So yeah, no,
it's been growing,
it's
and I
grown
just wondered
nicely.
what
Yeah.
you felt that its role was moving forward in its contribution to the sector in Scotland, in talent development, industry connections to each other, but also to international animation
I would,
companies.
yeah, I would say it's still it's got a multi-role purpose. I'd say, um, it's kind of original role, and which I think still is a key one today, is to bring together the animation community for a kind of 3 days of being able to kind of meet peers, meet new people, discuss, get inspired,
Yeah.
hopefully make those wonderful connections that can lead to future opportunities. Originally that was very Scotland based, but now actually, you know, we're expanding, and that is becoming more kind of UK based. We're getting, and then sort of spreading to kind of Europe. So it's about bringing together the animation and visual effects communities, and all parts of that, because it's not such a tight box anymore. Yes, it's about talent development for sure. About kind of, it gives industry an opportunity to feed directly into talent and kind of institutions, things that we're looking for, giving those little tips and pointers as to how to let students make those steps into the workforce. Hopefully feeding back as to what maybe some skills that we feel are particularly relevant. It's about showcasing what animation in Scotland is and can do to the kind of wider world, hopefully allowing studios to make those connections with international sales, distribution, broadcasters, etc. It's about having fun, in all honesty, as well. It's a key part of it. It's not a boring, dull conference. We bring people together to hopefully be really creatively inspired, inspired on a business sense, find new directions for their business, how to drive those forward given the changing environments. And I think you do that by making it fun and memorable.
Yeah. And it has
if
definitely been
if
that.
anyone falls asleep, they're banned for life.
Yes.
It's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. You've done an amazing job. It's like everything that Tom said. That is, it's a brilliant event, and I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And it's
And the way that you adapt to the industry is by how you program it as well. So you're always trying to stay on the cutting edge. So the Move Summit's 18th to the 21st of February, and for the first time on the Saturday there'll be screenings. So buzz along to www.movesummit.co.uk. So now we've got quite a bit of questions, and I don't know if I've got enough time for them all. So I'm going to try and combine as best I can. So very quickly, on the AI point, David asks, what's your take on Disney's deal with OpenAI in terms of IP? 200 characters being licensed to be used across OpenAI users to create generated content. Do you think that's going to change the shape of IP going forward?
It's quite interesting. I mean, I don't know that particular deal inside out, but we did come across someone who wanted to make a TV series, oh no, sorry, a YouTube series, and he'd actually created a company that basically got voice actors, quite famous actors, had approached their agents and did a deal to use their voices. So they would record them. I think they would have like X amount of recordings of the actor, and then they would use this AI tool to generate the AI voice. But they had permission from the actors, so I do think it's quite clever if that's a similar sort of thing, because it's almost like jumping ahead of people stealing it. They've actually used they've got the permission, they've done the legal part and the ethical part right, but they're using the tools. That means that the actor's still getting paid for it, but it means they don't have to always be in a studio somewhere, like, but they've got the permission and they'll get the fees. So I do think there's something in that. It's quite interesting. And I like the fact that they'd actually got the permission, and it's a new avenue and no one else seems to be doing that. So that was quite an interesting thing. But I can't speak on the Disney deal because I don't know enough about it.
So
I wonder what the kind of excuse me, what the kind of endpoint will be. In a way, it's like, is there going to be a market even for someone making a bunch of, Mickey Mouse knockoff shorts? Like, is anyone going to watch them? Like, what's the point? If Disney sort of said, "Oh, sod it, no one's really going to make any money out of it, so why not?" They're going to do it anyway. Or like, I don't know. Like, who knows? And again, is that just going to add to this kind of volume of slightly guff, essentially like almost legitimized black market knockoffs of existing IP, and like, really, who cares if it's rubbish? So it'll just sink, and no one will watch it anyway. So
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And there was another question here again about your opinion on what do you think about Adobe Animate being discontinued?
Happens all the time. Like my old favorite 3D software, which I used for years, set my first studio up around, was called Softimage. So it was bought out by Autodesk, kept in a stasis for a few years, and then discontinued. It just happens. Tools come and go. You have to prepare for it, and as part of this whole evolving workflow, because actually, what if there's a new tool pops up, or you switch to something else, and you go, wow, I could be doing everything I've been doing twice as fast now, but I've been stuck in Animate. So I think in animation, it's really important not to get anchored into certain tools and workflows. And so and it's the fact, right? They can do it. I mean, why not? It's probably not making money for them. They're spending too much time on development. It's etc. They can make more money by getting to developing a new tool or getting to switch. I don't know, but I'd say it happens. You just have to suck it up and
to roll with it.
Live with it. Yeah, there's no point
Another
getting losing sleep over
question
it.
related to that, but the impact on roles, asks, although you've said that the core structure and flow of 3D animation hasn't changed much, have roles disappeared in 3D animation, and what roles are going to be relevant across the next 10 years? Any thoughts that you could?
Really hard to say. I think
Yeah.
I think it comes into what studios' choices to how they develop their own pipeline.
Yeah.
Like maybe in some studios, concepting will disappear completely because is all generated. Some studios might focus more on animation and just go, okay, we'll film stuff, repurpose that kind of motion onto our characters. So we'll essentially video-based mocap. That's some studios might go, okay, we'll ditch the lighting rendering end of our pipeline and just generate, grayscale play blasts of all our animation, feed it a concept image which we've generated in whatever model, and output our render sequences like that. These are all things that are totally open. Who knows?
Yeah.
I feel it'll be down to the choice of A, the project, B, the studio, all these
Budget.
things. Budget. Yeah.
I think you might find people combining roles and being maybe more of a generalist as opposed to as niche, maybe. I don't know. Again, it'll just depend on the projects and the studio.
Yeah.
So there's a couple other questions.
I'm basically saying no one's safe.
Just learn everything.
Stay on your toes, folks.
Don't say things like that. Henry's saying educators are feeling a bit exasperated at times, and that we shouldn't be using generative work for assessment as an SQA policy, but we feel we should be helping students to experiment with it and analyse the tools. Would it be possible for industry to help support educators to bring about some changes with the SQA to allow that time for experiment and analysis?
I would say it would be lovely to. I would say most businesses are under such pressure just to survive at the moment. Realistically, think the way, I don't know if I'm casting a really sort of doom and gloom viewpoint, but I think priorities at the moment for a lot of studios are existing.
Yeah. Maybe that's where Animation Scotland could come in a bit more. I know that we do obviously have a subcommittee for education. I don't know how far that goes, like in terms of what level, like if it's just with the colleges and universities or if it goes even lower into like secondary school. Obviously we've now got the new courses that have been announced for like film and television for students, so it'll be an interesting time, and I think it is, like Tom said, it needs to be a collaborative, probably on a bigger level approach as opposed to the individual studios. But obviously we all want to help in any way we can. It's just the pressures of actually running a business and staying afloat at the moment are
it's
the
still
priorities.
good to be able to pull on volunteers from the industry to help with an issue like that. Maybe something we could tackle at the Move Summit. And then just to close, we're at 1 o'clock, but we started a tiny bit late. What advice would you give to someone at secondary school? You mentioned secondary school just there, Victoria, who wants to get into animation.
I think make stuff. Just make as much stuff as you can. Like, just be a sponge as well, and just, I'm so jealous of students because they have so much at their fingertips that we didn't have when we were studying and growing up. And I just think learn the craft as much as you can, but also if you can, go to any of these events. I don't know, obviously age restrictions and things like that. Anything that's going on in your neighbourhood, workshops, networking, meeting studios, just try and meet as many people and learn as much as you can. I'm just like, I wish in some respects I was starting now because you have so much at your fingertips, but I know equally it's also a difficult time. So that would be my advice.
Thank you. Well, we've run out of time. We're now just over the 1 o'clock, and I just want to say thank you to you both for future gazing with us today on the future of animation, and thank you all for attending today and being engaged audience members with lots of chat and questions. Thank you so much, and hopefully we have answered some of the questions you had in your mind before you came to FutureGaze. So now I'm going to thank Creative Edinburgh for continuing to host FutureGaze in partnership with EFI, and hand back to Vicky. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, just reiterating, thanks again, Tom and Victoria. Thanks for your time and your brilliant discussions today. Thank you all for joining us over your lunch break. Do keep an eye on our website and our Eventbrite page for more free events for creatives in the city. And have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.